today's traveler, whether it's luxury or whether it's somebody on a family holiday or even a solo traveler, is beginning to understand that as tourism continues to expand rapidly, it can also be a grave threat to the environment if not planned and managed well. This is, clearly obvious to all of us in the room, but for many average travelers out there, this awareness is just now bubbling up above the surface. So since I want to highlight how sustainable tourism is part of the solution as a driving force behind this global transformation of the tourism industry, and it also represents a sound business approach to capturing an increasing sector of the tourism market, I want to detour slightly and actually mention something to you that caught my attention and my interest last year in April. And that was that Toyota overtook General Motors to become the world's largest automobile manufacturer. So you might wonder, okay, interesting, so what's that have to do with sustainable tourism? I think it does. In the late 1980s, Toyota market researchers began to notice something occurring in the North American and European consumer market, the increase of a niche sector that was beginning to buy environmentally friendly products. By the early 1990s, this became an established trend. The emergence of ecotourism on the world stage in the mid-1990s, and Bruce mentioned that, kind of where it became a bit more normal to hear it. The International Ecotourism Society actually defined the term in their first board meeting in 1990. But by the mid-1990s, it was out there. It was on the world stage. And it represented this new environmentally sensitive way to take a vacation, reflecting, again, this same trend that I just mentioned to you. Now, Toyota began reading the writing on the wall really as early as 1989, that we were heading into an era of green consumer awareness and purchasing. And they began putting their efforts into developing fuel-efficient, greener vehicles, and they experimented with a hybrid car, hybrid electric car, which by 2000, the Prius had entered the marketplace. Now, I was intrigued enough about this story that I'm relating to you that I actually sought out and met with the engineering team that designed the Prius, because I wanted to know why. And what they said was, pretty interesting. They took a calculated risk, in a sense. And we heard this morning, from one of the presenters also that, in the business world still, or particularly in the tourism world, businesses will do only as much as kind of they have to do, or as much as it appears the market is telling them to do. But Toyota, in this particular case, went way beyond that. They were taking a risk, and they were predicting something that hadn't fully unfolded. And they weren't 100% sure of what the returns would be. Meanwhile, General Motors paid little attention to this expanding trend, continuing to develop big American cars and SUVs for the U.S. market that they had become used to relying upon. But North Americans were shifting their buying habits in other ways too, showing that this wasn't a fad, but rather it was an evolution of the marketplace. By 2000, organic foods were growing at 20% a year. They continue actually beyond that now, 25% a year. In 2002, the United Nations declared the International Year of Ecotourism, giving it global recognition, of course, and held the first World Ecotourism Summit here in Canada, in Quebec City. More and more hotel groups and tour companies began to offer new green products for this market. But in the automobile sector, and I'm going to tie this in a minute, GM still was not reacting proactively in any way to this change. Then they got a major wake-up call, as I mentioned, in April last year. They woke up and found out that for the first time since the Model T rolled off a conveyor belt in Detroit in 1904, they no longer cornered the world's market as the automobile manufacturer. Ford, a GM company, could not move their vehicles off the car lots. Actually, and by late 1987, car dealers were suing the parent company because of their inability to sell these vehicles. Meanwhile, Toyota had a waiting list for its environmentally friendly hybrid cars. It's now working hard to get the next, even better environmental car out on the market. According to the engineering team, they're now really running with this ball. GM, by the way, is working hard too. They announced not too long ago that they promised actually to deliver the most advanced green vehicle on the market in the next 5 years. 3 weeks ago in the New York Times, in the words of Ford Motor Company's CEO, referring to plans to build that top environmentally friendly vehicle, quote, "We are now taking a point of view of the future and devising a plan to support it." But in the business world, catching up is not really where you want to be. So by many accounts, we are now at a tipping point of green awareness among consumers, made all the more urgent with growing concern about the environment. So why did I kind of go into this lengthy kind of story about Ford and GM and Toyota? Because in the world of tourism today, and especially this message beyond this room, but in the world of big tourism today, the cruise lines, the airlines, and others, do not become the GM of the tourism industry. We're in a whole new game plan right now. Natural areas from scenic coastlines, lakes, mountains, forests, deserts, and so on, and incidentally including parts of North America as well as the other parts of our planet that one often hears about, rainforests and so on. These are places that are home to, in almost all cases, some of the world's last indigenous peoples, the make or break world of survival on an economic level for millions of people, and they are home to the last strongholds for plant and animal species on our planet. This study had never been done before. I was asked to do it because there had been a lot of anecdotal reporting that nature and adventure travel were like surging ahead in the market, but there hadn't been any real specific kind of scientific or research approach to see if this could be documented. What is fascinating to me, and I'm sure many of you are aware of this, but we use this as part of our plate for measuring tourism growth, is that 70% of all plants and animals in the world exist on barely 2% of the Earth's land surface. These are the so-called biodiversity hotspots of our planet. And as this study revealed, it's also where tourism is expanding most rapidly as more and more people seek out nature and adventure in their travel decisions. And we'll get to some of those issues why, and we heard a little bit about them, and I'll touch on them again. Now, as I mentioned, this dovetailed with other studies revealing nature and adventure as the fastest growing sectors of the market. This also reflected, by the way, a change even within the traditional tourism sectors, such as cruise ships, for example. And you could look at this, look at the tiny Central American country of Belize. It does not have any big duty-free shopping centers. It does not have any large casinos. It does not have fancy nightclubs. None of that type of stuff that you might find in a port like the U.S. Virgin Islands and St. Thomas. But what Belize does have is reef and rainforest, which is the prime attraction that has led to a 500% growth in cruise ship tourism to Belize over the last 5 years. Now, yes, that's alarming too, but and if I took the time, we are seeing cruise vessels now go places they've never gone before because they see this shift in the market and they need to capture that market as well. For example, Antarctica. Only once this was the realm specifically of expedition travel. 2008, in December 2008, Antarctica will host the first large cruise ships carrying more than 2,000 passengers, of course raising a lot of concern. Now, in a 2007 survey conducted by the Travel Industry Association of America, in which they asked U.S. traveling adults, where would you want to go on your next vacation? 8 out of the top destinations of choice selected by U.S. travelers represented nature. They talked about national parks, they talked about forests, the Grand Canyon, these types of places. Now, all 10 were outdoors. The 2 that weren't a national park or a forest or a river or so on were Washington, D.C.'s downtown monuments and the Statue of Liberty. Again, not indoors, but clearly an appeal there as well. In Europe, the trends are the same, if not even stronger in many respects. I was speaking just a couple weeks ago with the travel editor of Berlin's top daily newspaper, and he was doing a story on travel to New England, and he made an interesting comment to me when I asked him, okay, so, what's the attraction? Why are you covering New England, for example? He said that in Europe, they have all the cultural sites and museums they want, but what they don't have and what more European travelers are seeking is unspoilt, large wilderness areas. In short, we're living in a new era of active travel where nature, beaches, mountains, etc., as I said, have become the prime attraction. So is this really a surprise? What we're describing is the most affluent generation in history, the baby boomers, who came of age in the 1960s wanting to change the world, led an information technology revolution in the 1980s, rediscovered travel and personal fitness in the 1990s, and are now fueling a sustainable tourism transformation that